Welcome, Oyindamola. I'm really happy to talk to you today, and thank you for agreeing to jump on this podcast with me and talk about you have such a fantastic question, so welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. And you're one of my favorite places in London, and you have this great London accent, so I can listen to you all day. So I love it. I love it. Okay, so just tell my audience a little bit about who you are and just a brief overview of the question that you sent in.
Sure. Okay. So my name is Oyindamola. I live in London with my husband and two sons. The first one is about 4.5 years old, and the second one is about 18 months. And my question was just about how to sort of help the old one navigate what I imagine is the emotions that he's going through. So some help with understanding what the triggers are for a range of things that seem to mean he ends up crying and maybe struggling to really communicate what the problem is. So some things I think are more obvious, like if he's stubbed his toe or if he's had an accident, then it's easier to see what the trigger is. But in other places, there are repeated activities where I'm surprised a little bit that he still cries about things like, maybe parts of having his shower, parts of having his meal. And it happens on a daily basis. So I would have thought, he should be in the habit of doing those things by now, but they still seem to trigger some sort of crying and some sort of difficult meltdown that's a little bit complex to manage sometimes. So just understanding, my thinking is maybe there's a common theme of a loss of agency that maybe he's feeling in those situations, but there might be more to it than that. So it'd be lovely to learn about that and how to help him understand that, of course, he's heard, but also enable us to have a constructive way to go through some of those situations and maybe even prepare him so that we avoid the meltdown in the first place.
Fantastic. I love how you expressed that question. Thank you for elaborating on that. Well, I've got a book coming out on the 8th of August called How to Help Your Child Clean Up Their Mental Mess. And I know you're familiar with my other book. So this is particularly for parents to help your child have the system to manage your mind, because as we know, your mind drives everything. And if we can give our children the tools to tell their story, even as young as 2, like you've got an 18-month-old, my youngest patient was a 2-year-old. You can start teaching children from as young as 2 how to actually help them process through these things and work out what the cause is. And because if you think of a child, they don't, as we know, a child's learning more and more language as they're going on and getting more and more insight, but they understand more than what they can express. And they're a lot more intelligent than what we take, at this stage than what we actually think. And for years, there's been this sort of philosophy that children, you've got to really dumb things down for children. And to a certain extent, absolutely, the language and that kind of thing. But we've made some wrong assumptions about how much they do understand. And a lot of that understanding is ahead of the ability to express it. So there's a lag between how they understand and see themselves in the world, which is still developing, but it's more advanced than the ability to express it. So we've got this little bit of contradiction that can happen, and it can be triggered by certain things in life that seem so normal to you and I as a parent and as an adult, but for them are huge things. And if they don't have the tools to sort of manage the energy that comes along with that, it can explode in some little patterns and behaviors that come out that seem to be repeating themselves and turning into sort of patterns in their life. And so this is what I think you're describing. So one of the first elements there is that it's great that you're starting to look towards the root, that maybe there's an agency thing. Maybe he's wanting to show more agency. Could be that. Maybe it will help me to understand a little bit more by taking you through a couple of questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you a couple of questions related to a specific behavior, or one particular. We'll choose one of the patterns, and then whatever comes up, just answer whatever comes up. Now, what I'm using to guide me is actually on page 38 of this book, where I've actually got a table that you can use, get familiar with, and you can do the same thing with your child. Now, I'm going to do it with you, guiding you, and what I would recommend that it's on page 38. So it's like a little table that literally has little questions and things to help guide you. Because the first thing we need to do as parents is try to understand, get our own understanding of what's going on, and then model that understanding, let that understanding not model, but to guide us in how we then interact with a child. But even before all of that, we need to be able to know that we need to manage our own reactions. So it can be very frustrating, and there's totally no judgment, because we need to allow ourselves to be messy. I just did a podcast now on, and I think you really enjoyed, on we really need to allow ourselves to be messy. Parenting is messy. Messy parenting is normal. And we just know we're never going to have it all together. Every child is different. Every situation is different. And we know that. But somehow we put this tremendous pressure on ourselves that, geez, I got it right last time. Why can't I get it right this time? I got it right with the first kid. Why can't I get it right with the second? I'm an adult. Why can't I know what to do? And how can I, why are these things happening? We've got to stop doing that to ourselves. We've got to give ourselves the latitude and the room to be messy. It's okay to be messy. We need to really make that an acceptable thing amongst ourselves as parents. And it goes contrary to what is out there, because we've got this whole pressure on us to be these perfect parents. And it leads to things like helicopter parenting versus what I would call safety net parenting. And I'll wind that into my answers and questions with you as well. So number one, give yourself permission to be messy. Tell yourself it's okay to be messy. Messy parenting is so 100% normal. No one's got it. And quite frankly, never going to totally control the mess ever, because of the new things that keep coming up. And as you just don't know what your child's a unique individual, so on. And things happen and so on, and dynamics change and all that stuff. So it's very important you do that. And in that messiness is give yourself permission to spend a bit of time on working out the best reaction for yourself. And that's where you're familiar with the neurocycle from my other book, Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess. It's great to then spend a bit of time and think, okay, this behavior is becoming a bit of an issue. You're a bit concerned. You mentioned that you're concerned about, it's happening a lot. It's kind of disruptive to your family life. And it's spilling over into potentially at school maybe, or when you go out, with family and friends and so on. So you want to know, how can you sort of preemptively manage these kinds of situations? When they happen, it can make us and ourselves feel frustrated or irritated or, even angry. And that's okay. This is the messy part. So step number one is in this allowing yourself to be messy is I would take a little bit of time, 10, 15, 20 minutes to work through a neurocycle for yourself and think, okay, this is what he's doing. What is your child's name?
Joe.
Joe, it's a cute name. Joe is Joe's doing these things. It's making me feel. So first of all, like one sentence, how does it make you feel when he cries constantly for these things? How does it make you feel? And there's no guilt or judgment here, and everything's okay because you're allowed to be messy. Okay.
Yeah. So at those times, it's a number of things. It's upsetting to see him upset, because, clearly I'd like to help him and sort out, or at least.
I'm just writing down as you tell me. Yeah.
Of course, support him somehow, even if I understand there might be an aspect of him needing to work through some things by himself ultimately, but if I could at least support him or let him know he's heard, or just help him feel safe in that moment, because I'm imagining, he's not just going to cry if there's no reason for it. There's something that's obviously upsetting him in the first place, and maybe it's just not clear or visible, or as you said, maybe he doesn't have the words to express them. But if I could somehow give him some reassurance and comfort in that situation, then I think that would be helpful. Another thing is concern in some cases for his younger brother, because I think he's still working through that understanding of his younger brother not being exactly able to do everything he's able to do. So there's a safety aspect as well that I'm also concerned about. And, sometimes, as you said, there's an implication on other things, like we're trying to get somewhere by a certain time. And I'm also thinking, of course, that's that timeline slipping because of this situation that then needs to be managed. I'd say it's maybe in that sort of hierarchy. Definitely my main concern is making sure that he's all right, or at least gets back to being all right as soon as possible.
Perfect. So I hear you say that, it's upsetting and concerning for the little brother, upsetting because you don't want to see him upset, and upsetting and concerning because you've got to get places, and this is not a pattern that's consistent. This is not a coping mechanism that's going to be sustainable. And so it makes you feel almost a little bit helpless sometimes, because, how do you help him? And I'm sure that maybe gives you I don't know, how does it feel, like a knot in your stomach, or maybe your heart starts palpitating when you see him again. And you may even have a thought, sort of a perspective flashing through your mind of, oh my gosh, this is happening again, or whatever, you may or may not. But that, that's all okay. Okay. So that's great. So what you've done is actually identified 4 signals. You've told me how you feel. You've actually, I kind of put the words in your mouth. I don't know if your heart palpitates, if your stomach like lurches, or,
The right feeling, you got it quite right. Heart races and frustration.
So that frustration, what I'm trying to point out here is that our emotions are linked to our bodily sensations, our behaviors. You may, I don't know what you do. Can you give an example of what you do if it happens?
Yeah, so sometimes it's at bath time, and I'd usually call his name, and look him in the eye. So sort of come down to his height, look him in the eye, and say, "This is part of bath time." Every time there's bath time, there will, some water will go in your eye. It's uncomfortable, I know that, but it's a transient thing. Well, I don't use the word transient, but I say, it's going to be over soon. We will dry you off. Get ready for school. This happened yesterday. It will happen tomorrow again. You're safe. You're fine. You're not hurt. So, but please, sort of calm down and let's get through the process as quickly as we can.
Excellent. So your behaviors are, those are just perfect. The way you've explained that is excellent. And the more times you're doing it, the more you're actually wiring that little thought tree into the brain. So that's excellent. So that behavior is excellent, that that sort of behavioral response and the perspective of, oh gosh, this is happening again, but you are persisting and pushing through that, this is the way you explain, this is going to keep happening. It's going to happen tomorrow. It happened yesterday. So that's what you're helping him see. For yourself, there could be a little jolt of, oh my gosh, it's happening again. So even maybe a little bit of a, oh gosh, it's kind of scary this, this is it's kind of, why is this taking so long sort of thing. And that's okay. So you've captured your signals. You've actually also gone to this, you've done, which is the first step of the neurocycle. You've also reflected in your answer to me. You've reflected on, well, maybe it's the losing or feeling a bit like he's losing agency or autonomy and you're trying to reason out and explain why this isn't a loss of agency. It's something that's a normal thing in life, which is, so there's a bit of reflection going on. The reflection there is to try and find out, why is this happening? And then you obviously ask me. So there's a desire to find out why. So the reflecting is, why. Part of this reflect step where you're asking the why question is to look at the behaviors. And you explained exactly, you said, for example, the bathwater in his eyes makes him cry. And it's happening consistently. It happens daily. So there's a pattern to this. So that's now we're moving over into the third step, which is to take the stuff of all the emotions and bodily sensations and the perspectives and the behaviors and reflecting a little bit and now gathering that. Now this is where it's an ideal time for you to write. And if you did this separately from your child, you don't have to write right now, but you can do it yourself. What would be great is when you go from the session is to sit down and to actually, because you've got cleaning up the mental mess, so you could use the book to get your exact, step one, gather awareness. So I would go from this session or find time today or tomorrow and write down gather awareness and write down the 4 signals, repeat like what we did, upsetting, concerned, you feel helpless, it seems like this is always going on. And, your body, you get that lurch in your stomach. So just give me a sentence for each of those things. The reflect, you started explaining, I think it's the agency thing that you think it's that. Then, then write, writing all that down. So sorry to confuse you. Step 1, you're doing kind of out loud. You're talking to yourself. Step 2, you're talking to yourself. You don't have to do it for long. Just take a minute for each. Put your timer on, a minute or 2 minutes for each. And then write. Spend a bit longer, 2 to 3 minutes, writing down these things that you've just, the emotions, the behaviors, the perspectives, the warnings, the bodily sensation. Just write the 4 little sentences down. And then you could put a little bracket. You could use a metacog. I explain how to do a metacog in the book, or you could just write it down all over the page. The key with writing it on the page is don't, turn your page sideways and draw a circle in the middle and talk about Joe's crying in the middle. And then you could have your 4 different emotions coming out of there. The 4 different signals coming out of there. So it would be emotions, bodily sensations, behaviors, perspectives. Separate out your response first. So don't put his so much, put your response to his behavior. So what we're doing here first is we're analyzing what you're going through so that we can get you in a stronger place and a more resilient place to keep you calm, because you sound like you're really calm and handling it very well. But if it happens a lot, it could throw you, and then that's when things get really messy. So I'm helping you to get yourself, create a network that when it happens, you stay in that resilient place and say the things that will get, break the cycle, the negative cycle very quickly. So this is going to be the kind of thing is I feel frustrated and helpless because, just to say that, I feel frustrated and helpless. I get a lurch in my stomach. I maybe get snappy or whatever, or withdraw, or my face drops, and then my perspective is, oh no, this is happening again. Simple as that. Then, you say those sentences, then you would reflect a little bit why. Well, it's because of this issue, why, so you don't have to spend long there. And then actually write that down. Write those sentences down And then as you're writing, just ask yourself why again. And whatever comes up, just put it down. You said one thought about it could be the agency thing. Maybe it could be, and as you're writing, things will pop up. Maybe there is I actually wrote down something here that I thought it might be, maybe he's a child that needs routines. And now you've got routines. I was going to ask you, maybe it's routines. Maybe he needs closure. Like saying goodbye to the nanny, which he got really upset about. You said in your question that he didn't. So maybe some kids need more routine than others, and they need very distinct, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do that. The nanny's going to leave. If the nanny said goodbye, she had to rush off. You were playing with your friend, or you were at your friend, or you were doing something, but she did say goodbye to you. If you can predict the sorts of things that that upset him, that's the sort of thing when you're writing down here. Oh, it happens when it happens. So you could have another line coming out of here. When does this happen? Okay, it happens when when the nanny left. It happened when bath routine. What else? What other situations does it happen in?
So sometimes with sharing toys or
sharing toys, whatever comes. Just think that whatever comes out. You don't have to tell me everything now, but blast that on the page. It doesn't have to be neat. The more you write all over the page, the more you dive deep into the depths of your unconscious, and you'll start pulling up things that may surprise you. Maybe something pops up and it was, oh, there was a shift at that point. There was that incident that happened, or, oh, I didn't think about that. That may not happen on the first day. It may take a couple of rounds of doing this to get to that. But the third step is to take the four signals that you gathered aware of, reflect it a little bit, and then putting that down on paper and reflecting deeper. And just putting it all over the place, whatever pops up, even if it seems unrelated. What you know, what you don't know, just whatever pops in your mind at that moment, write it all down. Then look at what you've written and say, okay, where's the pattern? How often is it happening? Now, this is when you ask the who, what, when, where, why, how. So we can work out the pattern. So that would be the fourth step. So the who is there a who involved? Is there a who that's consistently triggering? Is there a how? Is there something? Is it it sounds like routines to me. It sounds like, bath time routine, dinner time routine, nanny going routine. So it seems like, so that's why I'm saying the routine seems to be that he needs something like, okay, this is how we're going to do it. And this may happen. And she's going to leave because she's sick. Nanny's going to leave early because she's sick, or she has to go somewhere, or this is her time to leave. So prepare yourself. He just may need a bit of that kind of thing. So this is the sort of discussion you have with yourself in your recheck. You could also discuss this with your husband, even with the nanny. You could get to this point and say, hey, this is what I'm seeing. Maybe we can establish some verbal guidelines to prepare him, because I think the core is routine oriented. I don't think it could be agency, but I think it may be routine focused, and I could be wrong. And you can, see as you do what comes up.
Yeah, that's quite consistent, because they are around things it happens more around things that take place on a regular basis, which is perhaps where, I was a bit more surprised, because I'm thinking this is happening constantly. I would have thought, you're somewhat accustomed to this by now. That it's going to happen. As you said, nanny leaves at a certain time. She leaves after a certain set of activities have been completed. So I wouldn't expect that to trigger, but it's making sense what you're saying now. I think the verbal prompts probably will help help him transition.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, very much verbal prompts. So that would be a key thing for me here. And I'm writing I know you can't see what I'm writing, but I've got the big messy thing on my page, and verbal prompts. Now, we got to that through this discussion. You see, we went through it quite analytically, and you took it, you're observing your child, but you're observing yourself interacting with your child. That's what I want you to do first. So first, look at it that way, because that will then give you the sort of viewpoint of, okay, how can I now transition over to helping my child? So the verbal prompts, I think, may help, because I think what's happening is that even though it's repeated each day, that's very much the child's security, and maybe something has happened that's disruptive. I don't know. This is what you can dig around and find, or you know more about your life than I do. Maybe something happened that triggered the routine, and this routine is very crucial for him to feel safe. And maybe something happened that was a big disruption. Maybe a grandparent died, or maybe a new nanny came along, or maybe a job change, or maybe a house change, or maybe a new friend at school, a new teacher. This child of yours likes routine. Something disrupted this routine, so now it's playing out in every routine. That could be the thing. It could be, it may not be. But in doing this process, you may find something that made him feel the need to have a routine that he is guided through verbally, even though it's the same every day. Because and I love how you handled the bath time routine. I think that's wonderful. So even though he may still be crying, take comfort in knowing that your words are comforting him. That a child, that intellectual side of a child that they can't verbalize, responds extremely well to reasoning. It's validating your child. And what you could add to that is saying, I know it's really uncomfortable. I can understand. We can't understand someone else 100%. I see that this is really upsetting and I'm so sorry. And, that's really frustrating for you. And I can see how that could be irritating, having water in your eyes. But unfortunately, this is what we have to do. We have to wash our face like you've been doing, but add in the validation of his experience. That may be missing and that may shift. I see the temptation is to say, we do this every day. This is going to happen. And that's so logical, but that he could perceive that as, oh, I'm bad. But he's not bad and you don't mean that. But that's the messiness of parenting. So to say, you know what, this is going to happen every day. But before you tell him that, which makes him feel bad in a way because he's thinking, oh, why am I keep doing this? I must be bad. There's something wrong with me. And he can't verbalize that. So he'll cry more. So it gets worse. So you get this vicious cycle going. Whereas if you say, hey, we're going to get in the bath, there's going to be water like yesterday. And I can see it really upsets you. And this is where I'd bring in a toy or Brainy and have a bath next to the thing in Bath Brainy and say, oh, Brainy really doesn't like water. I wonder why Brainy doesn't like water on his face. And see if it's that or if it's got something to do with a routine or if that behavior of him crying is actually something else. And this is where once you've done your own little neurocycle, where we talk about where we got to the point where the verbal prompts may be a really great way of handling and how I'm describing it now. You could add another to your action is to use verbal prompts, which is step 5. And another part of your action is to then bring in a toy, whether it's Brainy, whether it's one of his favorite toys, a toy duck, whatever. So he can externalize. And you could say, I wonder, I see Ducky or Brainy doesn't like water on their head. And, he has it every day, but he's really battling. Do you know why? And you may find that is non-threatening and you can get him to enact it. Or do you want to bath Brainy first? Or do you want, obviously this mustn't get in the water, but let's take a toy that can go in the water. Should we sprinkle a little bit of water and see what will make him, Brainy, happy, or the toy happy, or the duck happy, or whatever goes in the bath happy? I don't know if you've tried that, but that gives a child agency, if it is an agency thing, but it also is a way for a child to verbalize and start explaining what they didn't have the words to explain. So you're providing an action in an environment. So you've acknowledged that this is uncomfortable. It's non-judgmental because you've worked on yourself to control the reaction of maybe getting irritated. I'm not saying you are, but I mean, if it's happening every day, it's very easy to say, we do this every day and you don't mean to, but that's the messiness of parenting and it's okay. So let's see, how can I get from, you do this every day to, okay, let's see, let's bath Brainy. Let's see, why Brainy doesn't like the water. Or let's see, I see that it's really Can you hear the different languaging? But to get yourself in that state where your tone, intonation, body language, of which they are experts at reading, is under control so that you don't get frustrated, because that frustration, no matter how you're trying to control it, will spill out into the conversation. Unfortunately, he's going to see that and feel that before he hears your words. So you want him to hear your verbal prompts. So that's why I say, get yourself ready kind of thing, and your resilience up so that you can handle the interaction with him. And in going through the little bath time routine, you can then go through the same little neurocycle, but it's done, it's done pretty quickly. And once you get the hang of it, it's quite fast. So first of all, it is, getting yourself ready. Then it's taking the toy and saying, I see that Brainy feels a bit worried about the water. Maybe Brainy's tense. Look, Brainy's standing there with his shoulders up, because maybe that's what he does. I'm just guessing. Maybe he stands with his shoulders up and doesn't want to get in there, or it's resisting. And I see that, Brainy just does not want to get in the bath because Brainy does not want the water on his face. And then, so you've done 3 things now. You've done emotion. Brainy feels frightened or sad or upset or whatever. It's in his body. Behavior, doesn't want to get in the bath. Perspective, doesn't like water. See, you just 4 little statements. But you're saying it all in one sentence. I see Brainy's sad. Brainy was scared. Brainy doesn't want to get in the water. Brainy's trying to not get in the water. Brainy's got very, very, very tight shoulders or a tight tummy. And this is, Brainy really doesn't like water. How can we help Brainy? And why do you think Brainy's doing that? So you could just do before you say how, say why. Why do you think Brainy's doing that? And then see how that works. And you give him the opportunity to sort of express it. Then say, well, what do you think will help Brainy? And then third step, where you would be writing, you're actually providing the opportunity to act it out. Say, okay, what would help Brainy have a nicer bath? What would work better? Maybe we could put sunglasses on your face so that the water doesn't, or a little goggles. We could put goggles on your eyes. Would that work? So now you are you could even demonstrate, should we put little goggles on? So that enacting then leads to the fourth step, which is let's find solutions. This is the issue. You got a bath. We know what worries you. Validated, blah, blah, blah. You've done all that stuff. You've reasoned with him. And now you be finding a solution. We have to get through this. So what is going to get us through this? Maybe you pour the water on yourself and I don't do it. And here's a favorite little bucket that you buy him, or something, or a favorite cup that he loves, or something like that, that he can put the water in and scoop it over his own head when he's ready. And let's hold our eyes together, so you something like that, where the agency issue, because there's obviously the fact that you said that there's something there that you recognized. So now giving him the cup, doing all of this, is dealing with this routine thing, but also maybe addressing the agency thing. And then he says, okay, and then the action, fifth step is he gets in the bath and he pours the cup over, he puts the goggles on, or whatever the action is. And if he cries a little bit, say, oh, it's okay, I understand, it's hard. And then he stops crying. Oh, wow, you only cried a little bit today, only 5 tears. That's okay, that's good. Yesterday you cried 6 tears. Little things like that, even though you're not going to count the tears. But it's that giving him that kind of solid sort of feeling of it's tangible. Wow, so you're praising the progress. So he still cried. The bath time was still a bit of a mission. It was still kind of a stress. It still took more time. It's still frustrating, but you were ready for it. He's now gone through a different process, and you praising the progress. Look how he did this. Look how you did get in the bath. You did this. It's amazing. Praise the progress. Praise the effort that went into it. And even if he cries just as much, say, never mind. Tomorrow it'll be better. We'll do the same thing, and then you take the same routine again and the same routine again, and each time you'll get a little deeper, and then you can try that, not just for the bath routine. You can say, okay, let's talk about this. I see that what does he do over meals? You said that there's things at mealtime that he gets upset about.
Yeah. So meal times in some cases, it's if there's not quite enough sauce that as he was expecting, might be teriyaki sauce or ketchup or something with his chicken, then he might just abandon or try his very best to abandon the entire meal. But obviously we don't want that. So we don't want that to continue. That's where possible. We'll try, of course, to get him more of the product if it's truly run out, and sometimes that resolves it. But sometimes there isn't more of the products at home, but it's just not the right time for it. Or as you say, we're out at a restaurant, so it's not an immediately fixable solution. But hopefully, that's not reason enough for him to abandon the entire meal. And there's a bit of a halfway house that we can try to reach at the very least.
Totally. You want to teach him resilience, because life is not going to go its whole way. So you want to breed self-esteem, not narcissism. So you don't want him to think, okay, the whole world revolves around me. If I'm unhappy, everyone must jump around me and fix the situation. I need that sauce now. So it's a situation of you're sitting at the restaurant, there isn't the sauce that he likes, or something's wrong with the meal. It's think of the 5 steps. So think of, okay, I see that you're frustrated. You wanted that sauce. You cross, you don't want to eat. So I see you frustrated. Emotion. You don't want to eat. Behavior. I can see your body's crossed because your body's tense. Maybe, I don't know what he does, if he pouts or if he pulls up his shoulders or, yeah. So I can see you doing that, and maybe take Brainy in your bag so you can, demonstrate or whatever toy. And then I can see that you are now thinking you're not going to eat this meal. Perspective. Perspective is the attitude towards it. So if I don't get my way, I'm going to do this. So that, the first 3 things are leading into the perspective. So what you've done is you haven't yelled, you haven't judged, you haven't got mad, but you very firmly are saying, I see you, I recognize, but this is not where we're going to throw, we're not going to, you're also saying in a nonverbal way, we're not going to throw a tantrum, we're going to work through this. This is part of life. Things do happen. Restaurants don't have, but you're not going to say that yet. You're first going to notice and observe. So it's very sequential. So name those things. You kind of have to practice this so that it comes out like that. That's why I say do it a lot on yourself, practice and that kind of thing, and then you'll get the hang of it. And then you're going to say, I know why you feel like this, because you really want that sauce. So there's the why, the reflect. And so now what are we going to, let's the third step, it's demonstrate. So in Brainy doesn't have the source, so Brainy's going to not eat, but Brainy can't not eat. Brainy needs to eat because Brainy can't live without food. So you're transferring it over to this little, and Brainy's brain needs to grow, and your brain needs to grow, and you can control what goes in that brain. And when you practice, if you can eat this without that source or try another source, that's really great. This is good for your brain. It's okay if things are hard, but we'll get through this. This is hard for you now. That's the kind of languaging you want to bring into that third step where you're kind of working all this mess out. And then we're going to say, okay, so what's our solution? Fourth step. So you don't have that source. So what other source would you like? Because you have to eat the food. So do you want some salt? Do you want some pepper? Do you want another sauce? Here are some options. Choose one of those. So you give them an option and they need to choose. But the option is not to not eat. And he may still play up a little bit, but your gentle, firm kindness, you're going to eat something. And even if he eats one mouthful, that's progress. So, okay, we'll take it home and you're going to eat this at home and we'll find the sauce you want because I know I've got it at home. So you're going to sit there and you're going to, maybe color in and draw and you're going to be, do something, but we're going to eat and you're going to eat this at home with the other sauce. So you either eat it here with one of the, because you see, so you give him options that not too many because he's 4.5, but he's got to realize that you mom, and he's got to eat the food. He can't not eat. And he's not going to, and the big thing here is that if he doesn't get his way, he's going to, develop a sort of those bad behaviors and you want him to get, and then the action is, okay, let's eat 3 pieces of this food. 3 pieces, so you've got enough energy to go home, and at home you can eat some more, and then with the sauce you want. So how can you eat those 3 pieces? Can we put some grated cheese on? Can we put some chopped tomatoes on? Something like that. So you give him 1 or 2 options. And that's the action. Then he does it and maybe eats it all, maybe he doesn't. Whatever he does, that's progress. It was hard, but you got through this. Well done. And it can, the more does that make sense? It's quite a lot that I'm saying, but you'll hear the podcast and you'll be able to hear it again.
Yeah, that would be helpful. But that does, so it's that sort of affirmation and encouraging him as he does make some progress, even if it's not the full result yet. But
it's the progress. It's the effort. It's the effort that he actually, thank you for listening. That's great. We worked this out together. We are going to make a plan. This is great. Even though you're not happy with the plan, we worked through this. This is really good. This is going to happen a lot. Things, you're not always going to have the sources you want. You're not always going to have your friends doing what you want them to do, but this is okay. This is what we do when these things happen. That's the model. And if you do that a lot in your life, because things go wrong in our life too, openly model that process, that's really important. So, literally everything I've said is literally in the book with child language. So you can actually see how to adapt it down to their level as well, which I think will help you a lot.
Yeah, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. One thing I've really picked up from that is sort of emphasizing the resilience and actually starting to more consistently talk to him about the need to be resilient. And I think I hadn't really focused on that as much before. So that's, I'm really, in addition to everything else you've said, I really will take that with me and start to, let him know that absolutely it's not practical to always get what you want, but it's about how you do that really. You
want to build his self-esteem and you want to build resilience, and you don't want to build narcissism, and you don't want to build a child that you are stepping around, that you're going to acknowledge, but you know what, you have to eat in a restaurant. We're not going to play up here. This is where we eat. We'll make it work. And that's that teaching that struggle is a normal part of life. Things are not going to go your way, and that builds the psychological immunity. It builds the resilience. If we helicopter parent, if we bubble wrap them to try and keep them happy, we're doing them a total disservice. They don't have to be kept happy. You're not responsible for your child's happiness. Happiness is something that comes from within, and happiness comes from recognizing this is the struggle, and I made some effort and got through the struggle. So you're going to see, I believe you'll see a tremendous response from him, positive response, where he starts thinking, I did this on my own. I didn't, it's almost like you're showing him another way of, I don't have to just cry to get through this thing. I can actually cry, but I have a plan, a solution. I can walk through this. There's a way out. There's a way to manage the messiness.
No, thank you. That will inevitably be a lot more empowering for him as well. So that's putting him definitely on a more productive and sustainable path.
It will. Sustainable is key. Sustainable is key because you want him to have the tools to manage the next situation that you're not there, which may be at school when someone takes something out of his lunchbox, or someone says something to him. And each resilient may not be the same thing, but he's already now realized I can't just cry. I can't just get upset. I can be upset. I'm allowed to be upset, but I said that wrong. I can't just cry. I can go further. So it's not just ending in the tears and that's it. It's, I can have the tears. It's okay. It's justified. This is upsetting, but let's now go through these. Why am I doing this? What can I do? Let me do it. And it's that we want to do. So think of it almost like when a plane takes off. It takes off, it flies, it lands. When we start acknowledging, I feel like this, but I don't do anything about it, I'm feeling sad, I'm going to cry, the plane takes off and then it crashes. And that's what's happening. Whereas what we're teaching him now in this, what seems like such a simple but laborious system, but it comes, once you get the hang of it, it goes, it's a life skill, okay? You're teaching him to take off the plane, you're validating that the plane is in the air, but you're flying the plane and you're teaching him to land the plane. You're empowering him to face the struggles of life, even though it's discussing bath time and a meal. Those little things translate into the big stuff.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Just a quick question, if that's all right.
Of course.
If and when he's sort of rather loud and it just seems like he's not even listening, is there any particular strategy or tactic to sort of interrupt that behavior and get him to at least focus and come to a place where we can have that conversation? Because, there are times when, he's sort of shouting and, as you said, maybe he's
being a child.
Yes, well, exactly, yeah.
He's being a child, and we don't have to pathologize childhood. This is the messiness of parenting, the messiness of childhood. But there's the reality. So how can you kind of get him? So are you referring, just quickly so that I have the context, just in general playing and hyper, or when he's upset, he may start shouting? When he's upset. Okay. So that's where having something to anchor him is great. So what you do is, instead of it just being mom telling him what to do or dad telling him what to do, it's brainy. So it's the let's do our neurocycle. So what has been very successful with children is when they're in that place, we say, okay, you know what? Let's go get our brainy. Let's do our neurocycle. They love the word neurocycle. They love the word brain. Even if they say brain cycle or fix my brain, give them an anchor and say, okay, you're upset. Let's do our brain stuff. Let's do our neurocycle stuff. Let's do our brainy stuff. Brain is a great word for a child to get their mouth around. And especially if you started showing him the little cartoons and things like that, and obviously the book's only available in August. You want to start this immediately. But, I can email you a little image of the picture so that he can start becoming familiar with brainy. So that becomes his anchor. So what I'm saying is you want to give him some sort of an anchor. So at the moment it could be choose a favorite toy or go buy him a brainy squishy ball so that we get him thinking about brain, and I'm controlling my brain and I'm learning to manage my own life. There's so many you can find at all the local shops. You could find some sort of squishy.
We don't have one of those actually, but we don't use it, but that would start now, yeah.
So that now becomes your priority of having your little brainy ball, and you could have an area in your house that becomes a place where the neurocycle corner or whatever, where we work our things out, and a little bench and your toys. And, once you've got all the stuff together, you can just, a area that you can create either in his room or in the house, in the general area of the house is great because then the whole family can use it. So it becomes not just me using it, it's for all of us. Whenever anyone sits there, we're working through stuff. So if you're in a restaurant, you don't have that there, but you can just make sure you have your little ball. If you don't have your little ball, you can draw a picture and remember the brainy. So have an anchor point that you can bring him back and say, okay, this is making our brain all messy, like a big, take bubbly water and bubbles popping everywhere, and how that makes your tummy bubbly, whatever analogy to show messiness. Say, and when we like that, we're not going to feel good, and it's not going to end. It's not going to be great. I'm going to get upset. Dad's going to get upset. You're going to get upset. We don't want all this bubbly chaos. So you want to, when he's in a calm state, you want to explain this and practice this when it's a fun game. And then when he's in that state, then you say, oh, remember, we need our brainy. Let's grab our brainy. Let's grab brainy. Let's grab whatever version, and let's do some breathing together. And I know a child doesn't always want to breathe in that state, but holding on to something, if you can get them to just follow your breathing, if they let you hold them, but give them something in their hand. That's this consistent thing that is, I'm going to use this is making it chaos. Let's get it all happy again. Your brain's not happy. Let's get your brain happy again. Let's hold your brain. Let's get your brain happy again. Do you want me to hug you? And can we breathe together? Can we sing together? Can we draw something together? Distraction. Can we play with our puppy together? Can we go for a little walk quickly? Can we do some jumping jacks? So anything like that, and there's a lot of ideas in the book as well, of sort of decompression type activities. I have an app. I don't know if you're familiar with the app, the Neurocycle app.
Yes, yeah, I have no way.
Perfect. So if you can maybe get into that as well for yourself, and if he sees you using that, it'll also get him into this. And there's decompression activities on there. So there's some ideas there as well that you can try out and adapt down to him. So it's first of all to have that consistent anchor, the little brain something, and then grab that, and then the physical contact if he wants it. Sometimes they don't, and we have to respect that space. And then some kind of distraction, the breathing, the art, the movement, the play with the puppy, get us into a mental space where we can get our neurophysiology under control.
Right. Right. No, thank you. That's really helpful.
Pleasure. Well, what we'd love to do is invite you back in, let's say, a couple of months' time, or maybe once you've got the new book and it's come out and you've tried this for a while, we'll reach out to you. And if you'd like to come back and just share how this has worked, what did work, what didn't work, because this is when you start using the system, you'll find all kinds of great ideas that you'll build into the system. The key is to make the mind work with the brain properly. That 5-step neurocycle process is how you're going to make the change happen over time. Otherwise, it's kind of this chaotic sort of hoping it'll happen. So we'd love to have you back if you're interested to share with us how it works and how we can maybe refine a few things or whatever.
Okay, that would be my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you so much.